This is the first one. This is it actually in the Gaston County Historical Society book. And we just scanned it. That's some of the hauling that stuff out on wagons like that with mules. All handwork. All handwork. And at one time they had in Rosebud what they called the Little Dinky Trail, a Little Dinky line, and it was a small railroad. That's one of the cars up there. And that railroad line, they had their own tipple there. If you see the Rock Island line back there, the gondola car, and then there's like a lean-to. They dumped that cart sideways, and it went into that railroad car. And we was wondering what this round thing was, but that was a cable around that, and you see the gin pole around in front of the horses. The horses would go around in a circle. That would turn that big drum, and that would wind that cable. And then that cable would pull that car up there. Pretty smart stuff, huh? You can see the pulley there where the cable goes.
Was that a county line, Charlie?
No, the little, the Dinky Trail, this was just east of Rosebud, this Temple deal, right by, across the road from Frankie Mulhaugh's field there. It would be just east of the concrete jungle. You know where I mean? Where they have all the concrete animals there. Everybody following me? We know where the concrete jungle is. Well, this tipple was right there. And that railroad line ran across Highway 50, below the school, and went back to a Cozart pit, and a Waymar pit, and in behind Joan Rethameyer's house, and down almost to 28. And there must have been a half a dozen pits or so, wouldn't you say, Jim? Probably at least a half a dozen pits that they mined. And Jim and Charles Waymeyer came here. I'll give them a little pitch here. I've got this book at home, and I didn't look at it. I tried to get all this stuff about information around Rosebud, and everybody I called, oh, I don't remember that. I'm too old for that. I don't remember. For my time. It's all about the Little Dinky in here, who started it. Everything's in the book, and a lot about clay mining. At one time in Rosebud, they had 3 tipples. They had this one, then they had 2 tipples that you back trucks up. When I say a tipple, you would back this truck up this big, heavy timbered ramp, and then it leveled off. And then it had a thing that pivoted, that came up, so you just couldn't walk off of it. And as you backed your truck against it, this folded down, and as it folded down, it went right out over the middle of the railroad car. And then you would raise your bed, dump your clay in there, and then as you pulled out, then that tipple would come back, it would come back up, just by weight. Pretty ingenious. Gerald had them, Herman had a tipple, Rosebud had 2 of those and 1 of these, Owensville had a tipple, Bell had a tipple. Everybody had a railroad, I guess, had one of those where they dumped clay.
Johnson Station, halfway through your old roadway.
Do what?
Johnson Station.
Johnson Station, yeah. They had a little railroad spur there too, didn't they, at one time? Johnson Spur.
There's another one between the 2 Soap Creek bridges.
Really?
There where Joe Ball says is giant wood pile.
Really?
It was called Jaybird.
Jaybird.
And our farm had a clay mine that was mined with teams.
Yeah.
And I asked you this the other day. Does anyone here know what a corduroy road is?
Corduroy Road?
They took logs and laid them down so that they could run the vehicles over them through muddy terrain.
Corduroy Road. Then laid your logs,
Poles. It were little poles.
poles, and then you could just run right that way. This way and this way, and then you went that way.
Charlie,
Like
there was
railroad ties side by side.
there was another railroad track that crossed here where break time is. It went out to Strip strip mine
yeah.
just out south of town, there.
92 Spur.
92 Spur.
92 Spur.
I think,
Her investor's place by the station too, wasn't there, Charlie?
do what?
There was a, I don't know, what do you call it, a temple?
Yeah,
Right here where, her
Yeah,
investor's
I think
place
so,
was,
yeah,
the
downtown
station
there.
Yeah. And Charlie, I can remember in the 50s, 60s, the trucks in Owensville, every day at 5 o'clock, they'd be coming in the back door, what's the, IH dealer down
Riscal.
here.
They all went there.
The back door was open and the trucks just moved just as fast as they could go.
Oh, yeah.
The guy would gas them up for the next day, at 6
Oh, yeah.
o'clock in the morning, the
Oh,
guys
yeah.
all come in there and take off home again.
Yeah.
Old K9 International.
Go ahead. Now, let me find my pictures here. This picture here, I think, is Al Linhart. Ed got some pictures from Mike Linhart over at Freedom. And I've got about 5 or 6 from him there. This is a pit with Al Linhart. You can see they're loading it by hand there, the hard way. Shovels and the picks. Like they used to say on the county. Bring the picks and the shovels. Next. That's down in the pit. You can see the old K model International truck. And a drag line there, loading. Next. There he's got a high lift. And I think running the high, I don't know who the guy is standing up there, but I think that was Al Linhart running the high lift there. Next. More Linhart pits, another old International truck there. There's a water pump there. In the modern times, they had gasoline engine water pumps with a big hose, and they'd pump that water out whenever it rained. I'd say that's one of those hoist poles there. And see the water lines where they've been pumping the water out. And these pictures here now, Ed got from his brother-in-law's, the Stephan brothers down at Swiss. And this is an old Bay City scoop right here. Bay City. Sold and serviced by E.F. Marsh and Company, St. Louis, Missouri, Choteau Avenue. And I'd say this is a box that they put on there, and they loaded that by hand, and then they could winch that out and then dump it out of that open end. There's the prospecting drill. Now that's an older one there. It's got an engine on it, and you can see the drill flights.
That's an auger drill versus a core drill.
Right, right. This is one from we took up at Continental Cement. This was an old Allied Chemical drill, I'd say.
Charlie, there's still some of this stuff that's in use because Ron Landwehr when Linhart went out of the clay business or died, I don't remember which one. He traded his wife brought it. I think her name was Frida.
Yeah.
Brought the truck and some other stuff for us to sell at Mount Sterling.
Yeah.
And they had an air compressor. And Ron Landwehr still runs,
Oh, really?
still uses that
Really?
air compressor. So if you see Ron Landwehr running around town
Yeah.
with an old blue air compressor, that was in the clay mining business.
Now this, go back to that one more time, McKinney. This is a hydraulic drill here. It's a PTO. Instead of having an engine, the truck motor actually turns the drill and the hydraulics. These are the auger flights. This, I don't know if you could see on there, but right up there about that second horseshoe there, there's a little push button, and this head here slid off of there. There, you can see the head, and right up there. Just above up there, there's a little push button. These bits, they were just in there with a little wedge. You took a hammer, you hit that, those wedges came out of there, and then whenever you had real hard clay, you had to change your bits more often. You can see there, two of those are carbide tip now. Back in the old day, they didn't have the carbide tip. And those flights, whenever I was a kid growing up, my dad ran one of these drills. And Martin Kreitzer, he had a welding shop at Drake. And he would build those flights up. He had a big old DC welder, and he would hard surface all the way around those auger flights. And he'd build these heads all up with hard surface rods. He did that for Harbison Walker and most of the big clay companies around. And then after he left with them, I think they brought him up to Fred Holmeyer. And what was Walter Meyer worked there? I think it was Walter Meyer worked there at Fred Holmeyer's. This is Al Linhart's old truck. I think Brian owns that now, right? An old K model. They probably hauled about 8 ton or so out of the pit in that, I guess. Maybe. I'd probably be pushing it. And this is a little blurry, but this is one of your deeds for your clay contract, your mining contract. One of those no-nos that he told us about. But they would get like a 99-year lease, and they would give all the sections, townships, and everything whenever they came and got a lease to mine on your pit, on your property. And then that is registered at the courthouse. This is off of the Keeper property out on Highway P. This was Linhart. Now this would be, every one of those circles there would be a hole that prospecting drill drilled. Then they had after they found this pit and they marked it out, then they would have a core drill come in. That core drill, he would measure down. And then they would mark right there how deep everything was in each hole. Whenever they got that all done, then they would sit down and they would figure out about approximately how many ton was in that pit. And then they would come and offer you a deal to buy that pit in the ground. $0.10 a ton, 15 cents a ton, whatever, something like that. They had 100 years to mine, or 99 years to mine it. And that, a lot of those pits are now being mined, that were sold in the ground by grandfathers and grandmothers and great-grandfathers.
So where are all of those?
Do what?
Where do you find that recorded?
That, you probably have to go to the refractory company, but the deeds, the little copy down there, that's in the courthouse.
Are the archives and records from the original?
Yeah. I've never seen one platted out like that. Leon Siegel gave me some of these pictures. His dad, Tommy Siegel, mined clay for many years, and then Leon took over the business. And he had these, that is dynamite exploding. That's dynamite exploding. That's Tom and an old, I'd say it's an old TD, something international high left. That's about a, I would say that's about a 59 Ford truck there. 59 or 60, and they're coming up out of a pit, up the ramp. And that's Tommy there, and that's like that Bay City, I don't know what brand that is, but they're loading clay there. They blast that loose, and then they lift that up, swing around, and drop it on the truck. There's another one of that Ford. That's another older Ford. That's probably a 54, 56. I don't know. What do you say, Jim? What do you think it is? 56. 56? Got the big V on the grill there. It's loaded for power. Now, these pictures here I got from Harlan Waymire, and this is the world famous Schreiman pit over at Swiss. I'm sure if you live around Swiss or Herman or Drake, you've heard of the Schreiman pit. This thing was deep. That wall all the way down, see that down in the bottom of that hole? That's a loader. Sitting in water.
80 feet old.
There you go, there's a loader sitting down there in the bottom of that pit. Was it 80 or over 100?
80 feet old.
80 feet overburden? Really? Really? Who mined that? Everybody?
No, that was the Lee Christie.
Oh, LeClete Christie mined it? What years would that have been? 50s? 55? Well, about 55. Here's the crew here. I've got to read these names because I told Harlan I would. From the left there, that's William Warren.
No swearing.
Then there's William Warren. Then there's Ralph Lurie, Paul Litton, Hugo Meyer, and then the guy up on top of the rock, Turd Bacon. Love that name. I said, oh, was it? Really? He said, that's all I know. That's what everybody calls it, Turd Bacon. This is Siegel's modern day excavator and a tandem truck. Another one of them. Leon Siegel Mining. And this is the remnants of Allied Chemical. That used to be one of our large industries out right on the west end of town here. The main building and the kiln and the silos are all gone, but they do have a big shelter there where they stored their clay. And Continental Cement still uses that big shelter and the garage and those sort of things. Lee Powell is the manager there now, and they probably got 3 or 4 trucks here. I think they mine with, and an excavator. So you can see there has been a lot of people involved in this. Whenever I started working for the state in 64, I'm sorry, we had pretty well all gravel roads around here. It wasn't any big deal. Then in about 1970, the state decided that all of our letter roads should be blacktop. So we hauled a little gravel on them and shot them with oil, and then about the time we get one done, they'd find a clay pit on it. So the trucks would go in there and just tear the crap out of it. And out on Highway P, I don't know, y'all know where the little Gurley Ridge School is out, used to be. G.H. Garver was mining on Oliver Garver's farm, and then they were coming to Owensville, to Allied Chemical, and Al Lenhart was mining about 2/10 of a mile down the road, 2/10 of a mile down the road, and they were going down to Highway 50. So we had about 2/10 of a road there, a mile of road there, that didn't have a clay truck on it, and the rest of it was crap. We were out there shoveling blacktop, shooting oil by hand. I don't care if it was cold or hot. Let's go to Highway P. Get down with Highway P, then we went on ZZ, H south of Gerald. I mean, every road, Z down at Swiss, every road, double E, they all had clay pits on them, and a lot of trucks.
Charlie, you haven't mentioned, but I used to ride the school bus past the chemical plant all the time in the 50s and 60s. And all those dump truck drivers you were talking about, they always had their bills on their ball cap turned up. But it wasn't just turned up, it was rolled up. Anybody know why that was the style?
Strictly for speed. You don't have any idea why they had the cap bills up? I say speed, huh?
But if you could tell a clay truck driver by his ball cap being rolled up.
Whenever I worked at the Drake store, whenever I was either 12 or 13, I worked at the Drake store for Ray Krause, and then clay trucks just pretty well kept Highway 19 loaded. Heidels were mining, Arnold Waymire was mining, Russets were mining, Louis Waymire and Harlan were mining, Bledsoe's, I think they had some of the first diesel trucks around. And George Lange and his boys, they were mining. Bill Kimmer from Lynn had 3 or 4 trucks. Cruels, Ted Langenberg, and Howard, they had a bunch of trucks. Tommy Siegel, and Ridenauers, and Francis's, Colley's, G.H. Garver, Leroy Blower and Kenny Bowl, Bob Branson, and Mr. Phillips from Lynn. And Waltz Mining Company was Wilbur Linhart and Eldo Kixmiller, Jimmy Hampton, Clarence Irons, Jones and Turner, Norbert Kreutzer, Les Holshoe, Al Linhart, they all had trucks, Henry D. Kraft, Tommy Siegel, Leroy and H.A. Fry, Frank White, Joe Woods, Tony Kozark, he was in the mining or the drilling business, and Brinkman Transfer hauled to chemical plant, and we're honored to have Mrs. Lloyd here tonight, her father and grandfather. Her grandfather, I guess, started Brinkman Transfer. That's what I knew it as. Is that the right name for it, Brinkman Transfer? And her dad and her uncle, her husband and her dad and his brother, Ed and Ted, right? They ran it, and then they later sold out to Glenn Yates and Martin Shaw. And then whenever Glenn, things kind of slowed down then, Then, whenever they started driving for somebody else, I think they kind of put their own company. Then G.H. Garver started hauling most of the stuff into the chemical plant. And then there was B.A. Mantle and Bullock over at St. James and Dillon. And it was just unbelievable, the people involved in clay business in Gasconade County. And it always seemed like Drake was kind of the hub there, Drake and Rosebud, because everything kind of revolved around that area. You know, they parked trucks there at the old mill at Drake, they parked trucks in Rosebud. And I don't know how many of you remember whenever they had the mountain of clay there at Rosebud at Clarence Waymar's out there, just east of the old railroad bridge. That thing, you could see it halfway to Rosebud from Drake, you could see that clay pile, and everybody says, "Oh, they'll never haul that out of there in my lifetime," and they're still hauling to it. Well, they got to hauling with tandems and pups and trailers, and it seemed like no time and it had it gone. Just gone. And there used to be stockpiles everywhere around, and the refactory companies would buy those stockpile sites, and then the miners would stack it there for those refactories, and then they'd hire somebody to haul up to Danville or to Vandalia or to Mexico. Just pretty much the deal. It's a lot of fun looking through all this stuff and talking to different people. So, anybody, I'm ready for questions. I'm about done talking. I think everybody's tired of sitting. Anybody got any questions? Good.
Any questions for Dr. Bridges?
I've always been interested to know what the deepest clay pit is, and Tom Seago told me the deepest clay pit around that he ever knew was the one that was down at Rosebud, right there beside the highway that you've told several stories.
The Highland pit there?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that was a pretty deep pit.
And they're mining one right now up at someplace up around Bell that they say is 150 feet deep.
Really? That's pretty deep, 120 or 130, 40, that's getting pretty deep.
There's one just on the old city dump, one that Rosebud is across from, it was a 120 foot deep.
120?
No long way.
Yeah.
They had that posted, and they had a small truck bed they let down with a winch, they loaded, carried it up there, and I think it would have went deeper, but the guys refused to work it.
Yeah, yeah. In later years, the mine inspectors came around and they would shut them down if they didn't have enough back slack to where they were worried about a cave-in or something. And we're talking about this contract. Our neighbor had a pit that his grandfather sold back in the, I would say in the 40s. And he sold 14,000 tons of clay, and I don't know what he got for it. Doesn't make any difference. But anyway, now they came and mined it here about 5 years ago, and they mined 37,000 tons out of that. So he got a check for the difference of 14,000 and 37,000. And then whenever they got done, then they trimmed the banks up, and he put a automatic cattle water in there, so he's got a nice pond and watering trough. So I mean, they're not all bad. They're good. Yes.
My brother said he remembers there was a sign around Owensville that said something about Owensville or Gasconade County clay mining capital of the nation or something, and he said, does anybody else remember that? And does anybody know who put it up and when?
Probably some clay miner put it up. No, I don't know. Do you remember that sign?
I do.
Do you?
I've seen it.
Really?
So,
I don't remember. Then I have a short memory. It was king around Gasconade County, though. As you can see what Dr. Bridges said there, I mean, Gasconade County pretty well led the pack, you know. So, yes.
I just remember as a kid, this would probably have been in the late 50s, we grew up and lived about a half block off Highway 19 in Herman, right at Casey's, west of Casey's. And, you know, we'd ride our bikes out to the corner and sit there and watch and count the cars and the trucks and stuff. And honestly, I think there were more clay trucks going up and down Highway 19 than there were cars. That's just the way it felt, the way it seemed.
Yeah. And you know, they all met on that bridge there at Herman, going back and forth to Mexico and Danville, all those years, and here a few years ago it was unsafe, but I guess trucks were smaller then, maybe. I have to tell one more story. You know, all the county road workers and a lot of the clay workers met at Drake there. Langenbergs and Bill Kimmers and a bunch of them parked their trucks around there. So Calvin Horseman back here, he worked at a chemical plant for years, and he said something about stopping at Langenberg's store and getting a good lunch meat sandwich. I guess when he was working down at Tryman's Pit. And whenever I worked there at the store, I worked for Ray Krause. And it wasn't the cold cut capital of the world then. They had a meat slicer and a meat block there, and they had cold cuts, but I don't think they really washed it and disinfected it. So you could always tell whenever somebody seen the cat licking on that meat slicer. Because for about a week, nobody bought lunch meat. Everybody come out with a can of mackerel or sardines or corned beef or Spam. Fact, that's a fact. Any other questions? Yes, go ahead. Calvin can correct me, but the guys I talked to said they refactored it here some, then they sent it to East St. Louis. And it was calcified here. Real fine. And they sent it to East St. Louis and they bagged it and whatever, and they used it for clarifying water. They said you could take a quart of muddy water and drop a teaspoon of that alum or whatever, drop it in there, in about a minute or two it'll be clear. Yes?
Do you know if the current Emhart class, I think it's got a new name now, do they use any local clays at all?
I don't know, I doubt. I don't know. I don't know where they get their clay from.
When they first started, it was skinny.
But Clay Christie, whenever they first started up here, yeah. Yeah.
With the economic impact, the tavern didn't do bad either.
I'm sure the people that was down around Riscob's there could tell you a lot of stories about there was a international dealer and gas pumps, and just behind it was a liquor store, and behind that was a tavern. So I'm sure they all did good business, especially on rainy days. But it made a good living for a lot of people. And my dad now, he ran one of those prospecting drills, those auger drills, and David asked about how you could tell what it was. He could take a piece of clay, and whenever he hit clay, he would take that clay and he would cut on, scrape on it with his pocket knife, and then he would touch it to his tongue, and he could tell you if it was burley or what it was.
Yeah.
He had to teach me how to do that. I was pretty young.
So basically what they would do is like the flint clay, distinct and different, you know, there's always this old joke about, you know, those geologists are just rock lickers. Well, this is the plant clay. It's sort of slick. So, you know, they would just bite off a little piece and they would actually chew in the clay. And then they would say, oh, that's a little fat. So by that they're meaning that the texture is smooth. And so, oh, that's flint clay. Then this diopside, same thing, and that's gritty.
Yeah.
That's diopside. They can do it by taste. So
Yeah, they had some of these old guys, that was their job, to sort the clay. I mean, they sorted it, somebody else hauled it to them, and then they sorted it. Yeah, back here.
Charlie, I don't know how much truth there is to it, but my dad told me a long time ago that one of the products of the clay industry was they made Clapper Girl baking powder out of it. Is that possible?
Clapper Girl baking powder?
From grinding and processing. I don't know either. I remember him telling me, he was talking about
You
that.
better write that one down.
I'll look that up.
Clay pit?
No,
Oh, the chemical?
The chemical.
Really?
And that's one thing that they stressed was that after it went through the burning, that was part of the compilation, I guess,
Yeah.
of kind of the thing.
Really?
And cosmetics. I was on
Yeah.
the same tour with Marilyn.
God, man. I tell you, they didn't take us farm boys when I was in school out of a place like that, let me tell you.
Clay, there's so many uses for it in your everyday life. It's used commonly in a lot of products for filler. And not just cosmetics, but even in food. So if you, for example, a lot of candy bars, like Three Musketeers, that nougat, there is clay mixed in that gives it that good texture. It's not,
That'd be the fatty type.
so as far as like your everyday items that you use, that it's this everywhere from the concrete in the buildings to the highways. It's a really unique mineral with a lot of different uses. And, it provides a lot of people jobs around here. I just wanted to add too that if you have any, I'm going to put some of my cards up here. If you have any kind of historical information or you had an interest on your property about a particular pit, some of these pits I actually have locations and names associated with them that I have listed there. So if you're sort of interested in your pit, I can't promise you I can dig it up, but I might can. So I'm going to leave some of my cards up here. Feel free. I label these so you can come by and look at the different grades of clay.
Everybody go lick that for you, baby.
Yeah, taste the fat.
Be fatty, all right.
So this one here is actually a mix, and it looks vein. You can see layers in it. So this is diopside and beryllium mixed together. So a lot of times they were mixed, but so all of this other stuff is free for you guys to take, other than the rocks. The Department of Natural Resources, sort of like, I don't know if you're like me and get the Missouri Conservationists at home, it's free for the citizens of Missouri. I think these are quarterly. So just help yourself to anything on this table. These rocks and minerals, these are common rocks and minerals in Missouri. You can look at those and pick them up and just try to put them back in the same bin that you got them in. And then you can look at the clay rocks and such. And I'll put some of my cards up here. And we have some information. We actually have a museum there in Raleigh, not too far from here. You could come by and visit us. I would certainly be happy to see you again. And then I could sort of show you some more rocks and minerals in Missouri that we have back in Raleigh. So I just wanted to say that, especially now that I'm starting to go into to developing more of a assessment, if you have any kind of prospects on your property that you're just curious about, we don't charge anything. All come out here, or my supervisor, there's only 2 of us in the industrial minerals. Part of our job is to help people develop mineral resources. So if you have something on your property that you're interested in, just give me a call and we'll be more than glad to come up here and talk to you. You can show us what you want to show us. That's a service that we offer not only for the clay mines. Like I've helped the guys there at Kaplan Quarries that have the quarry near here. They bought some new land and they brought down some core for us to look at. They actually found, which you don't want to find in a limestone quarry, they actually found a clay pit in their working wall. And that sort of threw them in a frazzle, but I think that they got beyond it now and they're back into the limestone. Because they're just after limestone, they did not want the clay. So That's the way it works, especially around here, because they're all over the place, and there's still a lot to be discovered yet. So again, thanks for having me up here. I always enjoy coming up to Rosebud to visit my family, or, you know, a lot of times we would come down here to Owensville and have dinner at the McDonald's, because this is what my aunt and uncle are.
Farmer's Merchant.
No, I think we can all agree, we learned a lot about Owensville history and Clay and Gasconade County. I want to thank you both for a very informative and entertaining session this evening. I know you'll be around for questions for those who might want to follow up and give it
Yeah,
some
I'm in no
content.
hurry.
So, anyway, thank you.